Cowboy, don't look. My dress is gone, whispered the Apache woman behind the waterfall. The canyon breathed like a living thing, its stone walls dark with age and slick from centuries of falling water. And the waterfall roared with a voice so loud it swallowed thought itself. The cowboy reined his horse at the edge of the narrow trail, dust still clinging to his boots from miles of hard riding, when he saw her shape through the veil of mist. At first he thought she was part of the rock, another shadow carved by water and time. But then the light shifted, and he saw the curve of her shoulder, the dark braids heavy with water, the stillness of someone standing perfectly balanced in chaos. He dismounted without thinking, instincts older than words pulling him forward. Yet something in the scene warned him to stay where he was. The water crashed down behind her, white and violent, but she stood calm within it, eyes closed. Hands pressed lightly to the stone as if the earth itself were holding her upright. He had crossed deserts, fought men, buried friends, but the sight rooted him more firmly than fear ever had. He meant to turn away. He truly did. But then her voice slipped through the thunder of the falls, soft and urgent, carried on a breath that sounded almost like prayer. Cowboy, don't look. The words were barely louder than the wind, yet they struck him clean in the chest. He froze, back half turned, staring at the wet stone near his boots, heart beating louder than the water now. She did not scream or plead. There was dignity in her whisper, a quiet command that demanded obedience more than any threat. She told him her dress was gone, taken by the river when she tried to cross upstream, and the way she said it was not shameful, only honest, as if stating a simple truth the world had forced upon her. He swallowed, jaw tight, and answered without lifting his eyes, telling her he wasn't looking and wouldn't, that he'd step back if she wished. His voice sounded rough to his own ears, scraped raw by dust and unsaid things. She did not ask him to leave. Instead, there was a pause, long enough that he wondered if she had changed her mind, if she had already slipped away with the water. Then she spoke again, telling him the current had taken more than cloth. It had taken her knife, her path, and her certainty. She was Apache, traveling alone to reach her people before nightfall, and the canyon had closed around her like a trap. He listened, shoulders squared, staring hard at the dirt as if it held the answers to questions he had never dared ask. He had been taught that Apache were enemies, shadows on the horizon meant to be chased or shot. But the voice behind the waterfall did not match the stories burned into his youth. It was steady, intelligent, edged with strength that did not need to announce itself. He found himself answering her questions before thinking, telling her the trail ahead was narrow but passable, that his camp lay a mile west, that he could leave his coat on a rock and walk away if that would help. The water shifted, then surging higher, and he heard her gasp as she braced herself against the stone. Without looking, he stepped closer, boots slipping slightly on the wet ground, and stopped when she told him to. The space between them felt charged, not with danger, but with something fragile, like a thread pulled tight between two hands. She said she did not fear him, not in the way she had feared other men, and that confession unsettled him more than an accusation would have. He wanted to tell her he had done things he was not proud of, that fear and orders had shaped him into someone he barely recognized. But the roar of the waterfall swallowed those thoughts before they could form into words. Instead, he placed his coat carefully on a flat stone and stepped back again, turning his body fully away this time, staring out at the canyon as if guarding it. Time stretched. The sun dipped lower, light turning golden as it filtered through the mist, painting the air with fire. He heard fabric shift, water slosh, and then her breathing changed, calmer now, steadier. When she spoke again, her voice carried a different weight, gratitude mixed with caution, and she told him he could turn halfway, that she was covered enough to speak face to face. He did as she asked, turning just enough to see her reflection in the water rather than her directly, respecting the boundary she had drawn. In that distorted mirror, he saw her eyes at last, dark, watchful, alive with a sharp awareness that missed nothing. There was no fear in them, only assessment, as if she were measuring his soul the way a tracker reads ground. They talked then, not about war or stolen land, but about the river's moods, about how stone remembers every footstep, about how a person can be lost even when standing still. He found himself saying things he had never spoken aloud, about the road pulling him forward even when he longed to stop, about the ghosts that followed him at night. She listened without interrupting, nodding slightly, the waterfall framing her like a living wall. For a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them and the space they shared, a fragile pocket of understanding carved out of violence and history. When the light began to fade, She told him she would wait until he left before moving again, that her path lay deeper into the canyon where his kind rarely followed. He accepted that without protest. He placed his hat on his head, picked up his reins and backed away slowly, keeping his movements deliberate, respectful. As he mounted his horse, he felt the weight of the moment settle into him, heavy and undeniable, as if something had shifted inside his chest. He did not know if their paths would ever cross again, but as he rode away, the sound of the waterfall followed him, carrying her whispered words with it, etching them into his memory where no dust or time could ever erase them. The canyon refused to loosen its grip on him, even after the thunder of the waterfall faded into a distant murmur. It followed him like a shadow stitched to his spine. The cowboy rode through the early hours of night, stars sharp above him, the land quiet except for the soft rhythm of hooves. Yet his thoughts kept circling back to the moment behind the falling water. It was not her words alone that haunted him, but the restraint in them, the calm certainty that had demanded more from him than fear ever had. When he finally stopped to rest, sleep came in shallow waves, broken by images of mist and stone, of eyes watching not with suspicion but with understanding. At dawn, he woke knowing the road he had intended to follow no longer felt honest. Without naming the reason even to himself, he turned his horse back toward the canyon, telling himself he only needed to see the river once more, to be certain she had passed through safely. As he descended, the air cooled and thickened, the land growing hushed as if it were listening. He dismounted near the riverbank and led his horse carefully, eyes scanning the ground. There, pressed into damp sand, were footprints, light, balanced, deliberate. Relief moved through him first, followed by a quiet respect. She had not waited to be rescued. She had continued forward on her own path. The tracks led deeper into the canyon, toward a narrow passage where the walls rose close and tall. He followed slowly, mindful of each step, aware that this was not ground to be taken lightly. The passage opened into a wider clearing and he stopped short. Apache families were gathered there, moving with calm purpose, some preparing bundles, others tending small fires, children weaving easily between them. The sight tightened his chest. This was not the enemy he had been taught to expect. This was life, steady and unguarded. Before he could withdraw, she stepped forward from among them. Clothed now, her posture straight, her presence unmistakable. Their eyes met, and recognition passed between them without surprise. She lifted a hand slightly, a quiet signal that stilled those nearest her, and spoke to her people in a low, measured tone. All eyes turned toward him. He removed his hat and held it at his side, choosing stillness over defense. When she asked why he had followed, he answered simply. He said he had come to see that she had reached safety, and that he did not wish to carry silence like a debt. His words settled into the clearing without force or apology. An elder stepped forward then, his face marked by years that mirrored the canyon walls. He studied the cowboy for a long moment, eyes sharp and unhurried. After speaking with the woman, she told the cowboy that the land remembers how a man behaves when no one is watching, and that such moments weigh heavier than old stories or uniforms. No threats were made. That absence unsettled him more than hostility would have. He was offered food and he accepted without ceremony, eating quietly beneath the open sky. Children watched him with open curiosity, and that gaze stirred something unfamiliar and uneasy within him. When the meal ended, he stood and made clear his intention to leave. The woman walked with him to the edge of the clearing, where the ground sloped back toward open trail, and the river flowed calmer beside them. She told him that respect once shown does not vanish, even when paths divide. He told her he wished more people understood that truth. She considered his words, then said that choices are seeds, and not all of them grow where they are planted. Before turning away, she placed a small, smooth stone into his hand, worn by water and time. It was not a gift, she said, but a reminder of the strength found in restraint. He rode out of the canyon without looking back, the weight of the stone steady in his palm. Days later, among men who spoke easily of violence and division, he remained quiet. The canyon stayed with him, not as a place, but as a moment where water, stone, and silence had demanded more of him than force ever could. He did not know where his road would end, only that it had changed direction, guided by something deeper than habit, flowing onward like a river shaping its path through time.